How do you see the United States putting a lot of weapons in Jordan instead of putting them in Saudi Arabia or Qatar? Is that because of the distance? And because if something happens, Iran has to, it seems, in my opinion, Iran would hit Israel in the initial hours. They, whatever they're doing, they're starting with the, targets in the region, then Israel going to be the next target, next immediate target for Iranians. How do you see, because if Iran start attacking Jordan, they're going to lose some sort of the leverage to attack Israel. And
Well, I mean, only if you haven't planned for that eventuality. Again, the Iranians are professionals. I mean, the Iranians have to know that the force structure, because the Iranians are wargaming just like we wargame. And they're looking at squadrons coming in. So they're parking it and they're saying doctrinally, what kind of strike package can the United States project? How are they going to do it? Standoff attacks, precision guided attacks, air dominance, what thing, because ideally for the United States is that we will project air superiority, leaning towards supremacy over Iranian airspace so that we can have combat patrols all the time, suppressing ballistic missiles as they pop up. What we don't want is standoff, creating a gray zone where the Iranians can, have, periodic, windows of opportunity or windows of operational capability. So what does that require? It requires us to have bases where we can stockpile fuel, munitions, aircraft, maintenance, and we're going to be cycling these aircraft in. We're going to be sorting out, coming back, landing, sorting out, coming. It'll be a constant flow of airplanes. And so, the Iranians have to say, where are these aircraft going to be based? Jordan is logical. Two things. One, a lot of these airplanes are going to be used to create a buffer to defend against Iranian drone, cruise missile, and missile attack against Israel. It's part of the defense in depth that we've been using. Two, it's the logical strike path. I mean, look at Israel. You come in, they were coming in through Syria, then going into Iraq. But here the Jordanian government is basically allowed a straight shot, straight through Jordan to, through Western Iraq to Baghdad. And that's the launch site. We know that from the Israeli missiles. That's the launch site for a lot of your standoff weaponry. We're going to be coming in with cruise missiles, Tomahawks. Israel didn't use Tomahawks. We're going to be coming in with hundreds, if not thousands, of Tomahawk missiles. And then you're going to see us projecting our power in. But in order to project air power into Iran, we're going to have, again, just in order to project air power into Iraq during Desert Storm, we had to have KC-135 aerial refuelers up there. And the planes would come in, get topped off, go in, come back, get topped off, and land. Those need combat air patrol protection to protect them from any Iranian stuff. So all of this requires a certain element of American military power. The Iranians have to be looking at that, thinking about, how we're going to use our power. And therefore, do they just sit there and go, forget Jordan, we're going to pass over Jordan and hit only Israel? Or do they recognize that there needs to be a suppression? So I think you're looking at a military campaign from the Iranian perspective that includes suppression of any base where American military power is sourced. And right now, Jordan seems to be the primary base. And so, again, if I were the Iranians, I would put the Jordanian government on notice that regime change cuts two ways, that the Hashemite kingdom will not exist when this conflict is over. I would just make that a statement of fact. Because, there has to be consequences to actions. I would also tell the House of Saud, regime change in Iran means the House of Saud is not going to exist. I would tell, you have to play this game. This is an existential war, Iran wants to live in peace, but how can you live in peace with neighbors who are passive or facilitate this upcoming American aggression, American-Israeli aggression?
I think part of what has happened during the visit of the head of the Iranian National Security Council to the region was that to communicate that with other countries, with Qatar, with other countries, that if something happens, you're going to be in that game. It doesn't matter if you are actively in that or not. You're going to be the target. I think they have sent the message to the Arab states in the Persian Gulf. I don't
Well,
know
then the
if
Arab
that.
states have to send a message to Jordan. I mean, the Saudi Arabians have to go to Jordan and say, what you're doing is an existential threat to us, and we won't tolerate it. There can be no American aircraft allowed on your bases.
Scott, how many Tomahawk missiles? It could be. It seems that the main missiles that the United States would use against Iran are Tomahawk missiles, something like 600, 800 missiles altogether, considering 2 aircraft carriers, 15 destroyers, all these weapons in the region. It's going to be something like 800 Tomahawk missiles.
Plus submarines.
Yeah. Submarines, several submarines, in that. Because sustaining
but remember this, we're talking about sustainability.
It's not just starting the war, but sustaining the war is much more
You're
important.
right, but models of sustainability require us to have reloads. And we have practice, replenishment at sea. I would imagine, because I'm not there, but the idea of the United States is a mature military power. Let me just put it this way. We've been planning global war for a long time, and there are different scenarios in global war, one of which could have a carrier battle group engaged in combat operations that result in the depletion of certain kinds of munitions, critical munitions, on the ships that comprise the carrier battle group. So we can replenish at sea. We don't need to go to a port. We have the ability to replenish at sea. And so a ship can come up to a ship, weapons would be transferred across. So you can't just count the missiles that are on board the ships. You have to understand that we have reserve capacity. And I would say that, if you're looking at 800 to 1,000 Tomahawks, you've got to understand that we can probably replenish at least 2 times over. Now, what's to say about the rest of our war planning is another thing. Taiwan's got to sit there and go, wait a minute, if you're using all your Tomahawks against Iran, what do you got left for China? The answer is nothing, not much. But the thing is, we're a mature, I this is what I always caution. People get mad at me. I know right now, I don't know if this is live. I'm sure it's live. In your chat, Sky Ritter says bullshit. America's not a military power. We could kick your fucking ass, okay? You guys don't know anything about anything if you don't understand how powerful we are. And this isn't me as an arrogant American saying it. It's just a statement of fact. We prepare for global conflict. No one else does. The Russians do from a nuclear standpoint. The China's starting to think about it from a nuclear standpoint. No nation on the earth prepares for global conventional war. No nation except us. And we prepare for it all the time. Are we going to win? No outcome's guaranteed. I'm not saying we're going to win. But what I'm saying is, if you do, quit saying America's an empire in decline. Well, the Roman Empire in decline still managed to rally every once in a while and go kick everybody else's ass. Just ask the Persians, ask the Scythians, ask the Huns. All right. America may be an empire in decline, but we're still capable of doing a lot of damage on our way down. And we're not so in the decline that we don't have capacity. We know how to fight global war. We've prepared for it. I don't want us to fight a global war. I want this war to be avoided. But if you're sitting there hoping that we run out of missiles based upon the basic combat load of the ships that are deployed, then you don't understand how America fights global war, because we are prepared to fight a war that lasts longer than the initial basic combat load. That's like saying we send an armored battalion out there, and when they run out of fuel and out of tank shells, then the battle's over. No, we can rearm, re-equip, refuel, push on. this will be something America has been preparing for a long time. It's very expensive. There's no guaranteed outcome. And that's the other danger is, we do something like this and we fail. That brings up a whole another question of what are the consequences of failure. Can America afford to fail? And look, now we're going a different, there is no arms control anymore. There is no constraint on America's nuclear capacity anymore. The United States has just said that we may start resuming the testing of nuclear weapons. Just because we can. We're getting ready to upload warheads onto our Minuteman III, onto our Trident submarines to reverse the trajectory that had been in place since the START Treaty was signed in 1991, to lower the number of strategic nuclear warheads from around 30,000 to 1,550 today. We're now getting ready to jack back up to 4, 5, 6,000. In our budget, there's more production for new plutonium pits, which is why we need new nuclear testing, which means that we can take the number of nuclear weapons up even higher. Not just strategic, but we're talking about expanding into non-strategic nuclear weapons so that we can, be seen as having, matched Russian capability, where Russia today enjoys a superiority in tactical nuclear weapons. We don't want to give Russia superiority into anything. So as we do this, understand that if we're going to put this much emphasis on nuclear deterrence, it's not just deterrence, it's nuclear war fighting. So then you have to ask yourself, are we really going to let Iran beat us? If we're going to do all of this, put all of these resources in there, put the full weight of America behind this, can we afford to lose? The answer is probably not.
The problem is nobody can afford the war. Cannot afford losing the war. And I think, Scott, do you see the possibility of the war getting nuclear?
Yeah, 100%. Again, I would caution the Ayatollah on your desire to sink an American aircraft carrier. I might mispronounce his name, Stavridis, former NATO Supreme Commander, U.S. Navy Admiral. He wrote a book, a novel, about a potential war with China, and in which in the South China Sea, there was an engagement where the Chinese sunk an American aircraft carrier, destroyed an American carrier battle group using their ballistic missile capabilities. Now, this is a man who knows what American war planning is, knows it intimately. And therefore, you have to respect the scenario. As it said, the automatic response of the United States was to launch a nuclear attack against China as a warning for China not to go any further, that you don't get to sink any more American aircraft carriers. And so, we launched a nuclear attack against a Chinese city. Now, some people say, well, that's just fiction, but it's fiction written by a man who's fully aware of what reality is. I would say that we can't allow anybody to sink an American aircraft carrier. And if Iran sinks it, I believe the consequences would be nuclear. The same thing is if we engage in this action and Iran exhausts our conventional capabilities. I don't think we call it quits and walk away. This is why we can't allow this war to start. Whether anything I say comes to pass, I don't want to know. I don't want to prove it. I don't want to. I just say that the United States is no longer constrained by the moral compass that once held back the nuclear hand. We are governed by madmen, insane people who have no sense of moral obligation to the legacy of arms control. They don't believe in arms control. They don't believe that a nuclear war can't be won. They believe that a nuclear war can be won and should be won. They don't believe that we should never use nuclear weapons. They believe that because we have nuclear weapons, we must use nuclear weapons because that is an expression of American power. We're literally in one of the most insane periods of American history, where, again, I come back to my condemnation of the millennial generation that has failed the American constitutional republic because they don't know what the constitutional republic is. They can't defend that which they don't know. And if they're not willing to defend it, then the very things our founding fathers warned us about when we created a constitutional republic and transferring power from the people, from the states to a federal government, the danger of the concentration of power without checks and balances. That's what's happening today. Everything that was warned about in the anti-federalist papers. It's funny. A lot of people claim to know about the Federalist Papers. They don't. They just heard somebody mention it on a Sunday talk show. But do they know that there were anti-federalist papers published as well that warned about, and that because of the anti-federalist papers, we got the Bill of Rights, which was a concession from the Federalists to give people, give states, give people their basic rights. Because Hamilton didn't want any rights. He wanted total power. Well, everything that our founding fathers warned about has come to pass, and we have failed every test of the American democratic experiment, every test of the constitutional republic. And so the government that's in play today, in power, it's a cult of personality that's governed by factionalism. And it is exercising supreme power with no checks and balances. We have a federalized judiciary where state courts no longer have any say. They're immediately overruled by a federal judicial system that has been factionalized itself, and now it supports a political party as opposed to supporting the Constitution. I mean, everything that was warned about has come to pass. And so when you have a madman, a dictator, a cult of personality with his finger on the nuclear button at a time when he has removed all constraint regarding, anything dealing with nuclear, don't be surprised if the outcome of an existential conflict is a nuclear war.
I think, Scott, on the part of Iranians, do you see that Iran is planning how to respond together with Russians and Chinese?
No. If they were, they'd be launching a preemptive attack. It's the only response. I mean, it's the only way out at this point in time. And you started by saying, again, that
because in the concept of Russia, we haven't seen any sort of preemptive attacks so far. For example, in Ukraine, I totally agree with you with the preemptive attack, but it seems that to me that these, as we call it, the Eastern culture, they don't much in that sort of idea of preemptive attack. The Eastern culture is not Iran, Russia, China. In my opinion, so far they haven't reached that sort of.
Well, Russia is engaged in a existential struggle right now. We tend to forget that point. That Russia is knee deep, neck deep in an existential struggle of survival against the West in Ukraine. It's a war they can't afford to lose. And so their focus and their efforts are on this war. They are going to support Iran, but the real player here would be China. If I were the Chinese, because understand this, Iran is an important supplier of energy to China, and the goal is to make it even a more important supplier of energy. BRICS, the success of BRICS hinges on Iran, that if the United States is allowed to physically remove a BRICS member, that sets in place a model that can be repeated over and over again. So as BRICS attempts to expand, we start picking them off. And, we're not going to pick off Russia and China or India. We'll corrupt India the way we corrupted Venezuela. But we can take Brazil out in a heartbeat. We can take out South Africa in a heartbeat. So we remove the B and the S, and all you got is Rick. And then you start picking off the people to join afterwards. It's a death sentence. So, China should make it clear that an American attack against Iran will mean that there are no more limits on China's approach towards Taiwan. Now you've created a conundrum for the United States, because you see, we can't fight two wars at once. We can't fight this major existential struggle against Iran and defend Taiwan at once. So if China made it clear that if the United States attacks Iran, all bets are off on Taiwan, and but nobody's willing to do that right now, because everybody still believes that America is serious about diplomacy. We're not. We're not serious. We're sucker punching you. We're sucker punching Russia. We're sucker punching China. We're sucker punching Iran by letting people believe that we can sit down and we can talk and we can have these discussions, and we're really concerned about what you believe. And yes, we want to live in peace. No, we're America. We want to dominate the world. And we want to do that. America great again, strength, peace through strength. It's all about strength. That's all it is. And Russia, I don't say they get a pass, because Russia is confronting the West in Europe. I mean, this fight in Ukraine is a existential struggle between Russia and the collective West, that the United States has wisely said we need to sort of back out of. Except we don't really back out. We just play games, diplomatic games. But China needs to understand that if the United States attacks Iran and gets away with it, that means that we will begin reinforcing Taiwan and making it very, very almost impossible for China to even think about, being able to militarily resolve the Taiwan. China doesn't want to. They're trying to work it for peace, and you see what they're doing with the Kuomintang and all this. But an emboldened United States, victorious against Iran, we will reverse our one China policy, and we will recognize Taiwan, because we will view that as the ultimate way of containing China. The ultimate containment of China is the recognition of Taiwan. And there's enough people in the United States that want to move in that direction. And if we win a war against Iran, that's probably the direction we're going to go. So again, but now, the Chinese are in the same position as the Iranians are. They're too responsible of members of the global community to do something of that precipitous. But without a decisive Chinese statement and without a decisive Iranian statement, the United States will feel that they'll sense passivity, and that means weakness, and they'll strike.
The only country that is happy if something happens between Iran and the United States is Israel, and they're pushing so hard. They want it. And Netanyahu is the one, objective of his, life. And his final goal, in my opinion, is a war between Iran and the United States. And it seems that he's achieving that. What is the outcome of such a war that you just mentioned? The outcome would be devastating for Iran, for the region. But how do you see Israel in such a war, in the aftermath of such a war?
Look, the vision here is that we are able to end the Islamic Republic with minimal damage, to minimize the consequences of our action. That the maximum effect we get is the elimination of the Islamic Republic, which from the Israeli perspective opens the door for everything. Because now, the Islamic Republic is the only nation that stood up to Israel and the United States. You eliminate that, you eliminate the axis of resistance, and all of the Gulf Arab countries will fall in as compliant servant states of a greater Israel and the United States. That's what the Abrams Accords is. It's a vehicle of colonial empowerment of Israel. And so the vision is Israel will take some damage, but their number one nemesis will be eliminated, and the rewards will far outweigh the damage done. That the Abrams Accords will become reality. Israel will be anointed as the economic lord of the region. All Arab nations will now be, subservient to Israel, and the United States will sit back as the overlord and lord over that. So I think that's their vision. I think it's a stupid vision. I don't agree with it. I don't think it'll succeed. But Israel understands that this is the danger of having how old is Netanyahu now? 77, 78. A man with bad health. He's so selfish because he's simply trying to preserve his legacy. The legacy of Benjamin Netanyahu is the man who brought down Iran, not understanding that the consequences could be the man who destroyed Israel. Israel is one of the most dangerous countries in the world, if not the most dangerous country in the world, because of its unconstrained ability to initiate violence at will without consequence. I'd like to see at least Iran make Israel pay some serious consequences for the violence this time. They had an opportunity in June. They missed that opportunity. They hurt Israel, but not enough.